Okay, everybody, we will begin our meeting today. Thank you all for coming. We'll start over here and have introductions if we could with Melissa.
Yes, hi, Melissa Rademacher with the Downtown Community Partnership.
Linda Klebe, Member at Large.
Shara Fisher, Planning Commission.
Jim Johnson, Fargo School Board.
Tim Mahoney, Mayor Fargo.
Michael Redlinger, City Staff, Fargo.
Sam McDonald, Community Member at Large.
And I'm John Strand, Chair from the City Commission. We have a suggestion for two additions to the agenda. And Nicole, help me get this right. One is an acknowledgement of the neighborhood report that we have passed out, and the other one was the downtown neighborhood, core neighborhood.
Yep, an update on the core neighborhood plan.
So we'll add those. Does anybody have any other additions to the agenda? If not, can we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, going opposed, nay. Agenda can be posted as it stands as is. Any changes or corrections to the minutes from the last meeting, anybody? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Jim Johnson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Sam McDonald. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, minutes can be posted as they're written. Does anybody in the audience have any public comment for the Community Development Committee today? No? Okay. We'll go on to item number 5, Community Development Block Grant updates. Nicole, will that be you?
Yeah, Tia is going to kick it off with a presentation, and I'll just be there to answer questions. And also, Tia is getting over a cold, so in case she needs a little relief. So.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Nice to see you guys. Tia Braseth with the Planning Department. So it's your first meeting and here. Welcome. This is wonderful.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm going to go over it's kind of a combination of the HUD program update. So that's Community Development Block Grant and Home Funds, as well as today marks the first day of our public process period for our 2019 annual action plan and some prior year amendments. And in your packet, you do have the public notice that we will be posting in the forum after we go through the necessary approval processes. So just to give you an idea what we've been working on lately and what we intend to work on within the next 3 to 5 months is laid out here for you. Right now, as I said, we're starting the public process for the 2019 Home and CDBG Annual Action Plan and prior year amendments. They'll be on the same timeline, which I'll share with you in an upcoming slide. Also developing and implementing a CDBG workout plan to help bring our program into compliance. I believe that you were all showed a memo that we currently have more funds in our CDBG account than we should have. We're not supposed to be over 1.5 ratio, and we are, but now we work with HUD to develop what they call a workout plan to get on task so that we do have our compliance achieved by March 2020. And we'll get into that a little bit more in the next few slides. And then restructuring and redesigning the program to be in yearly compliance. There are a couple of changes that we should make in order to meet that every single year so we don't end up in the same situation. And then this spring, this summer, we need to start thinking about how we're going to prepare for our next 5-year consolidated plan. We are in the last year of our 5-year plan, so the next one is 2020 through 2024. So I'm going to start out with timely expenditure of CDBG funds. That's the compliance issue that I was talking about. Every year on March 2nd, HUD automatically does a calculation of how many or what our ratio is in our account. So this year we had more than we were supposed to have. So this is according to our records and HUD's records, this is the first time it's ever happened in Fargo, but it's not an uncommon issue nationwide or even locally. Moorhead's been through it. I was there when we went through it. It's easy to get through it. And it actually puts you on a really, it's a really good test for the city to stay on that track. Like, you should do a workout plan sample every year to stay in compliance. So I think it'll be a really good exercise for the Community Development Division. And Grand Forks has been through it before too, so I'm not too concerned about getting through this successfully. We just need to make a few changes. Some of the reasons I think we ended up there is there are many projects that didn't come to fruition, whether that was applicants who were not fully ready for those projects at the time of awarding, or just low capacity in awardees. So we just have to be careful about the organizations that we work with in terms of our ability to be there for them, to walk them through projects and what our capacity is, as well as what their capacity is. And I kind of already went through failing is not uncommon, but if it happens twice, it could result in withholding of our funds in the future until we meet compliance. So how do we pass the next timely expenditure test? We need to stay focused and on schedule. Choose larger projects to expend funds quickly. This is a recommendation from HUD. They want to know, okay, let's look at some really big projects. How can we get money out the door as quickly as possible, just so we can get into compliance, and then maybe focus more on those projects that require a little bit more time after we're there. Choose quick and easy spending activities, such as property acquisition, public facilities improvements, affordable housing development, rehab of single-family homes, and partner, like I said, with organizations that are prepared to quickly and correctly finish projects by February 2020. And again, that should be every year, but this year we really need to meet that test. So more so than any other year we've experienced, we need to make sure that we're going to quickly get through projects and correctly get through them. And then we talked a little bit about the workout plan. So we have to develop and implement that. That doesn't take very long. We'll get through that fairly soon. We have a tentative deadline of the next 30 days to get that done, which is an extension. And so what that entails very simply is it includes scheduled activities, milestones, and projected expenditures, so that HUD can say they can track how we're on that schedule and making sure that we're going to meet that deadline in 2020. And then, like I said, once Fargo is back on track with this, there would be more flexibility to work with some of those organizations that might need a little bit more city staff guidance. So now we kind of go into the 2019 plan and amendments timeline. So as you can see, April 23rd, this is the first step. The Community Development Block Grant and HUD, home programs require us to have a citizen participation plan, which we have in place. And all of these steps in here are required as part of that citizen participation plan. So the first stop is right here with you guys at the Community Development Committee. The next one will be the Planning Commission, May 7th. And then our public comment period for citizens starts May 13th, goes through June 12th. It's a 30-day required public comment period. And within that timeline, we have a public hearing at a city commission meeting, which is scheduled for May 20th. And then June 17th, after the public comment period's over and any public comments that we receive are noted in our draft plan or incorporated into the draft plan, then we go to a city commission meeting for final consideration. It's something that can stay on consent if that's pretty typical from my experience. And then after that, June 18th is the first date then that we could then submit it to HUD for approval on their end. And then just for some of you that may be new or do not know, the program year for the HUD programs is not the fiscal year. It's May 1st through April 30th. So I just wanted to show you that so you're aware of that. So for 2019, we had 35 CDBG and home applications. The difference this year, though, is in past years, we've combined that with our social service fund application. And in those applications that we've gotten in prior years, most applicants have not indicated CDBG and home as something that they're interested in applying for. It was more the social service funds. Approximately 5 is what the division was used to getting. Now having separated it, I think people were like, okay, well, I'm gonna try for my shot again at another pool of money, which who wouldn't do that? So we got 35 this year. That's why there was such an increase. And we actually developed a CD subcommittee to review those applications. And I think that was Thomas Hill, Matthew Pike, and Sam Eidenschenk. So they were the 3 that were on the subcommittee, and we met outside. in outside of one of these meetings. So I kind of gave them this information before they went and did their deep dive into reviewing the applications that we had. Decisions that can be made by the city of Fargo are who, what, and how, so we can decide who's going to implement the activities. Usually it's a combination of city staff and sub-recipient organizations in the community, and their purpose is to help us carry out our 5-year plan goals. And then what types of activity to fund, we have control over that. And then how the activities and organizations will be selected. So what we've been doing throughout history, it sounds like, is doing a formal application process, but we are not confined to just doing that. We can do a mixed method approach, which is what most jurisdictions do. So this year we implemented a little bit of that on top of the formal application process. So the mixed method approach to activity selection includes it could include a formal application process. We may also be able to use this as an idea collection where it's not so many sub-recipients or organizations applying for money, but maybe, hey, here's my idea, I would be interested in future funding. Case-by-case proposals, limited applications. So what that means by limited applications is maybe we don't have a deadline, maybe we have an open application year-round and we accept applications as the ideas come in. And then having conversations with community organizations and members, so we're proactively seeking out and choosing only those projects that clearly fall within our 5-year plan and the goals of the city. Unsolicited applications and proposals, we get a lot of those, people calling us wondering what kind of funds there are available. And right now we direct them to, okay, the deadline is such and such for the application, but if it was open, maybe we could take it sooner. And again, most communities use this approach, just always being on the lookout for potential projects. So another thing that I shared with the review committee is how to prioritize the applications. So what we did is we set up an entire spreadsheet of all the applications that we had, and then we prioritized them and had staff recommendations, and they reviewed it. And so what we first looked at was how the activity fits into the 5-year plan goals, city staff and organization skills, capacity to carry out activities, the history that we may have had with an organization, when activities will start, so timeliness, so we were looking at that, are you ready to actually have your project go right now, and what's your ability to efficiently do that, and where, it must be in Fargo city limits. And then, well, there's a caveat to that, it could be in another jurisdiction if Fargo residents are benefiting from that. For example, when I worked for the city of Moorhead, the CDBG program funded the FM food pantry. Even though it was in Fargo, there were people that benefited from that from Moorhead. So we can do projects like that. And then finally, request type. A lot of the applications that we received this year are that social service type activity, and there's a pretty low cap on that for community development block grant. That's approximately $140,000 every year. So when you have 35 applications, you're well beyond that $140,000 for that public service cap. And that's a HUD cap that they put in place that we must follow. So after that subcommittee meeting, we ended up with a handful of various projects that were really good, but then we failed our timeliness test, and we had conversations with our HUD representative, and we had to take a change in direction to, what I was saying earlier was bigger projects, more money. So we limited it, so we cut out a couple of the projects that we had talked about and left a couple of them in and just increased the budgets. So we are thinking $150,000 or more per project to get money out the door, but some of the ones we're looking at are much more than that. And then some of the smaller ones are only focused on homelessness, and altogether it's focused on homelessness and housing, which are HUD's priorities anyway. So up on the board now, you'll see the 2019 estimated resources that we're expecting for the year. CDBG, we got a little bit more. We just found out the awards last week, and we got a little bit more than we anticipated and from last year. So it's approximately $47,000 more than 2018. Our home funds are about 25,000 less. And then we have unobligated CDBG and home from prior years. And what that unobligated means is those are the projects that didn't come to fruition, and we have to calculate every single penny and put it somewhere in the program so it balances out to zero. So with that and program income from projects that you get repaid on, for example, the Nokomis building sold last year and we got that money back. So now that goes back into our line of credit and we have to allocate it to a project. So given all that, our estimated resources for this upcoming program year are a little over $2 million. And this is how we are proposing to spend every one of those pennies, $2.2 million. So one of the projects, we'll just go through the list quickly, and this is what's in the public notice that we would publish in the Fargo Forum in May 8th, I think we'd send that, so it publishes the day that the 30-day public comment period starts. First is Beyond Shelter, and that's for property acquisition for affordable housing for $345,000. Then Youth Works, that's also property acquisition for homeless youth sheltering for $350,000. They want to acquire a property to expand their homeless beds, and that's actually the only thing left in our 5-year plan that we have not met. So we have 4 homeless beds left. They're proposing to add 2. So we'll just be 2 beds shy of meeting all our goals, and that's amazing. So we're really excited about the potential with that one. Then a more generalized affordable housing development category in partnership with any public or private housing developers that are ready to pursue projects. That could be like Habitat for Humanity, Beyond Shelter, and any of our local housing developers. So $284,000 for that. Then the FM Coalition to End Homelessness, so they're focused on prevention, so operations on homelessness prevention, and then Gladys Ray Shelter is more of the direct care for homelessness. Single family housing rehab loan program, something that we've done for years, is in there still. And then our community development housing organization home set aside funds for $100,000. Affordable senior housing development with public and private housing developers. So that is more of a generalized category too, so that if there is an entity out there, and we've been having a lot of conversations probably with a handful of different groups that are interested in doing something. So we aren't very specific there, and that's okay because HUD doesn't require us to be. So we have quite a bit of funds to be flexible with that as projects come, and we have some good ideas there. And then the last 2 are just program administration to keep all of us fine folk employed, and our home and CDBG contingency fund, which is just for issues that may arise or a little bit under our overages and budgets. And then as a part of this, this public process, we're also going to propose a couple of amendments. 2 of the activities that will be canceled from 2018. Some of you are familiar with the Special Assessments Assistance Program. We're canceling that. It was funded with another source this year, and that's a really complicated project to fund with HUD funds. So that's why there was a change in that this year. Then the Rape and Abuse Crisis Center Public Facilities Improvement Projects for $15,000. They backed out of that project. They weren't quite ready for that, and I think they maybe are selling the building that they were going to be using it for. So that $15,000 now has been reallocated in that budget. And then for 2018, we are suggesting revising our slum and blight abatement and hazardous property clearance activity. That's a pretty significant budget. It's at a little over $620,000, I think, and it's not moving along quite as quickly as we had hoped. But there are some other projects that are coming about in affordable housing development, and those are like those partnerships with Habitat where a home will come along, but it's not blighted, so we can't fit it into that category, so it's adding a new category. So both of those activities are intended to result in affordable housing development. We just didn't have all the language in the initial one, so we're recommending moving $250,000 from slum and blight abatement and hazardous property clearance to the new proposed affordable housing development project in our 2019 proposal. And then there would be an amendment to our 5-year plan goals to add specifically housing development with private and public housing developers. We do have a pretty generic goal in there right now for affordable housing, but we need to be a little bit more specific with this and what we're doing. So we're going to update our 5-year plan with that if everything goes as planned in the public process. And then finally, future administration of HUD programs. I'm sure you've kind of gotten my drift throughout the whole conversation, is that we primarily, this is to achieve HUD compliance regularly, we primarily need to focus on larger projects and limit the number of small projects. I'm not suggesting that we don't do any of the small projects, but if we do, we need to have staff capacity on our end to be able to work with those organizations to make those projects happen, because whether it's a $2,000 activity or a $2 million activity, what we have to do for reporting and compliance is exactly the same. So administration gets to be a bit cumbersome. So it's good to spend as much as you can with as small of an amount of projects as possible. Then again, partner with experienced organizations and agencies. Continue to use a mixed method approach like we tried out this year. Have a list of projects and activities in order of priority. So this is like a backup list. And this is something HUD has always suggested too, to always have a list of projects that are ready to go in case something else falls through. You're ready to go with the next one. You've had those conversations maybe with the top 2 or 3 next projects, and you're ready so that you're not putting your programs at risk. And then finally, I think, we talked about this a little bit about future applications. Maybe we can consider not having a specific timeline and collecting them throughout the year, and it will help us have a queue for projects. It would also help with it, like if somebody wants to apply for a project and we're in a constrained timeline for getting applications in, that doesn't give us a ton of time to ask the right questions to ensure that they're ready to actually proceed with the project. So we might be able to have a few more of those conversations if we approach it that way. And certainly we could still do a formal application project or process with deadlines, but it'd be nice to add some of these other things in with the mixed method approaches. So that's pretty much everything that I wanted to give you for an update. And the action that we're seeking today is to approve this plan. So that's the 2019 activities that you saw in their budgets, along with the 2018 and prior year amendments, and bring it forward to the City Commission and the Planning Commission and go forward with that public process.
Okay, Tia, thank you very much. Let's start with a motion, if somebody would make the recommended motion. Jim?
Yeah, I move that we adopt the 2019 budget as presented, along with the amendments to the 2018
Okay, we have a,
presented.
is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mike Redlinger. Any questions, comments, feedback for Tia and Nicole and team? Tia, my sense says this is good, that we can kind of reorganize going forward. Is that correct?
I certainly feel good about it, yeah. It is a good thing.
Nicole, you're,
Yeah, I agree. It's a change in direction in terms of, and what's interesting, you may be receiving phone calls or emails or, some of our previous recipients. We had a similar discussion with our social service funds recipients. And, the CDBG monies, whether it's for program activities or for new construction or construction, aren't meant for operations. They're meant for that seed money to get it into operations. And so there are some, I'd say, repeat recipients that will want to take a look at over the next few years as part of a 5-year consolidated plan to see if they can get more operational and progressing, because this isn't guaranteed money, as you know. But I agree this is a good thing. And as Tia mentioned, we've been doing a lot of one-on-one time with potential people who have projects and ideas, and the great news is we have a list queuing for 2020. And so we're not really starting from scratch. There's a lot of people with a lot of great ideas in our community. It's really just lining up the components that come in play and then understanding when that CDBG money comes as part of that mix. And so, so we're really excited about the future.
here.
So Beyond Shelter came to us and gave a proposal, basically buy land for $500,000 and then have us give them the land. CBG funds could be used for that?
Yes, they can.
You also have a block somewhere in our city that they might be thinking to put a low-income housing block in there. So what's the role of the city on that? Do we help them figure out the financing?
We don't help them figure out the financing, but we help them, we're working with a developer right now who's thinking we're helping to come up with the financing. They have to kind of figure out their financing, and the federal dollars are the last ones in. And so we can kind of do that early pledge of those dollars and submit that to HUD and get that approval. But like, for instance, right now, if anybody's getting ready to buy land, you kind of need to get that pre-approval from us, and then we submit that to the feds and then come back. So we look for some patience on behalf of the developer as part of that process as well. And that's when some of those projects fall out, is we kind of sometimes can't move as quickly as they need to make their purchase agreements, et cetera.
And then the high-rise is going to come down, or that's a suggested plan for the rehab. Our housing authority, are we thinking of developing different areas around the community that we can take some of those clients, like 40-bedroom type of stuff? Is that something we could help incentivize?
Yeah, absolutely.
Anybody else? A question, I'm just curious, as we look forward to our needs, is it your sense that we can be more proactive in customizing these community development block grants to our needs for housing, affordable housing, poverty, homelessness? Is that basically how it shakes out? And we can, or do we wait for people more often?
No, I think exactly. We do, if we talk about maybe activities in the past, we had staff people that really had their ear to the ground, kind of day-to-day interaction with organizations and community groups to understand what the needs are in our community. We write a 5-year plan that kind of encapsulates all of that and then has that 5-year plan on how dispersing. So we're at the end of that 5 years, and we're right now reconnecting with all those groups and organizations to learn what the needs are, update those, modernize them, and get those included in a 5-year plan. So we can do, but absolutely we can be proactive, conversational, learn what the needs are in more detail. For instance, I'll use the YouthWorks as an example. They submitted a smaller in scope application. They're a past recipient whose project has fallen out based on construction in the past, construction timelines not quite lining up. And so when we learned about their acquisition goals and their moving goals and their expansion goals, we're like, hey, we've got a project for you, and that meets our timeline needs and our goal of getting more homeless beds in our community. So we hit the win-win check mark. And so you can think of it as us and our staff having a big giant rubric as we vet these projects and comparing against the community goals, the available funds, and the requirements. This isn't easy. Anybody that thinks this is easy money, it is not easy money when we're looking at things like Davis-Bacon and procurement processes, acquisition processes, environmental reviews, not to make it sound scary, and we have staff to help get through those processes, but those are the steps that need to line up in order for the project to happen.
Anybody else? Will our subcommittee stay active going forward into this process?
Probably, because I think we'll be getting ready to start talking about our 5-year plan update, and we'll want a lot of dialogue with you as part of that. We'll be literally kicking that off in a couple of months and start thinking about a game plan on how to tackle that process. That includes a lot of community engagement. In addition, just not to be forgotten, is a social service application committee. I know we haven't reconnected, but we would love to reconnect and start talking about those goals. Because usually, again, I know we're only a quarter into the new year, but halfway and 3/4 of the new year is going to be here before we know it. And so we'll want to have those discussions with Mayor and the Commission on how we foresee those goals moving into 2019 and early 2020.
Anybody else? And Jim, you were talking about the social service subcommittee, some follow-ups over there. That's good that we're going to look to follow up on that. Any further questions or comments? If not, Miranda, could we have a roll call vote, please, for the motion?
Clevey,
Aye.
McDonald,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Mahoney,
Aye.
Fisher,
Aye.
Redlinger,
Aye.
Rademacher,
Aye.
Strand.
Yes. Okay, and that's covered, Tia, that has covered both of those topics completely, right? The amendments and the, all right? Nicole, we had a couple other items we added to the agenda?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm going to try to present from the table in
That's all
case,
good.
try to make it a little bit more relaxed and conversational here. But, yeah, so in front of you, you have two laydown items, and mainly just to bring you up to date. I know we haven't met since January, and there's been some activities happening, and I want to make sure the Community Development Committee's fully aware. So maybe step one is, it was at the March 11th City Commission and last night at City Commission, where we've been talking about a land development code update. And working with the Planning Commission, we'll be publishing an RFP here in the next few days related to a land development code update. All in all, that's probably going to be, imagine, a 2-year process and a lot of engagement and discussion with you all and members of our community. One thing that's important, though, is that it's for us to try to communicate is it's a 2-step process. First, we want to do an audit of our land development code. The land development code was written in 1998. And before we hire a consultant and understand where that direction is changing to, we want to kind of have an assessment against our visioning documents and other master plans and market and community discussion to understand how much of the code we want to change, if it's a little or a lot, and update and figure out what's on trend around the community and the country as well. So, so step one is the audit, and we imagine that to be about a 6-month process. And like I said, the RFP will be going live here in a couple days. Step two, a separate project altogether, is the core neighborhood plan. And so you have a kind of lay down item here, light blue, kind of cut sheet, if you will, from a presentation we did at City Commission last night. And this is just the start of staff starting to describe objectives of a core neighborhood plan. We've had lots of discussion, both with the Community Development Committee, the Planning Commission, our core neighborhoods, and talking about a master plan, area plan, land use plan. You know, there's all different types of names that we can call this, but these are the objectives of staff that we're trying to get a perspective on. And but what we like to do before we publish this RFP is have some engaging discussion with you all and with our neighborhood associations, and really get that full vetting of the RFP and scope before we even start to publish an RFP. So it's got to be a little slower process. We'd like to publish an RFP maybe end of June early June, end of June for a year-long, approximately year-long study. So we'll be reaching out to you to see if you have availability to join the Planning Commission at a May brown bag. I'll send those dates to you. If that date doesn't work, we can find another date. We're trying to get 11 members of a Planning Commission together with 9 members of a CD committee, and it's hard to find a date that works for all. And so we're going to maybe kind of set up 2 sessions where we can do some roundtable discussions and get feedback also from the community groups, neighborhoods as well. And so that's kind of step one that we'll be doing hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay. I'm thinking of Jim here from the school board. Do boundaries for schools fit into this conversation at all for core neighborhoods?
Well,
I mean, I think it's certainly an issue that
I don't think it's our business to get into school, Joe. I mean, I think you guys got to tackle that one. If we get involved with that one, that just adds another controversy. I think our core thing is neighborhoods. What do you want in your neighborhoods? And the school can wrestle down the boundaries. But John, if we get into not our business, it just doesn't. I like to keep the lines distinct between the city and the schools.
Is there a communication there between us and
There
them?
can be communication, don't doubt that, but decision-making is the schools, it's not ours.
Because that's ongoing now, isn't it?
Well, we'd be happy to let the city commission make adjustments.
The mayor
If
offered
that was
here.
an offer, but first, I guess to answer your general question, John, I think whatever the core neighborhood plan objectives, from a school perspective, we believe the core neighborhood and the older schools in those core neighborhoods are critical to the long-term stability. So we're going to be supportive, I'm pretty sure, as a school district, of whatever the tenets of neighborhood core project plan would be. In terms of the boundaries impacting those core neighborhoods, most of the boundary changes that we're going to be dealing with, at least for the foreseeable decade, are going to really mostly be on the outskirts of town, which I don't think you're defining core neighborhoods per se as being. Most of them are going to really be affecting people south of the interstate, where at least my definition of the core neighborhoods are probably north of the interstate going up all the way to the north end of Fargo. So I'm thinking our boundary adjustments really won't have an impact, hopefully a negative impact on any part of our community, but shouldn't impact the objectives of a core neighborhood plan at all. They should be supportive, hopefully.
Nicole and crew, how many neighborhood associations are there? And are they pretty active, most of them, or?
We probably only have about, I'd say about 4 to 5 active ones that we know of. We probably have about 16 or so that they've notified the city that they exist. But in terms of active ones, probably maybe about 6. We have a register list in our office.
But how many neighborhoods are there total?
Oh gosh, there's probably 40.
I mean, it was like 40 neighborhoods, and you probably hear from 15, and 5 are very active, John, I think. And that's what I see in this. Be a little difficult in some ways because south of the interstate is probably not as active.
Yeah, so the boundary area that we're envisioning as part of this core neighborhood plan is a outcome of our discussion when we had a land development code task force. So we had a land development code task force, and next meeting we can maybe present those outcomes from you or send you a report from that. About 3 years ago, and then I should say Aaron Nelson is will be our staff manager. I don't know if everybody's met Aaron there on the end there, but yeah, so maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, we did a land development code task force talking about single-family areas. And so it had members from Board of Adjustment, Historic Preservation, and Planning Commission, and 2 city commissioners, where we talked about a list of range of recommendations on things that can change in our core neighborhoods. That study boundary is the same study boundary we're talking or defining as our core neighborhoods. And that would be defined as 19th Avenue to the north, Interstate to the south, River to the east, and 25th Street to the west, but to swing around and pick up Madison neighborhood. So those are the core neighborhoods that we're talking about. And we think about the challenges they foresee. Of course, not every one of them see the same challenge, but the challenges they see with changes of use, redevelopment, blight, change in family type, modernization of the houses. You know, they all have not a long list of issues, but they've also all had a first level of neighborhood planning done in 1990 and 2000 through CDBG dollars, through Dan Molly and Jessica Thomason's tenure here. And so it's about updating those plans as well as getting some common vision and strategic planning so we have a tool for communication and decision-making and expectations on both the city's side and the community side on what that future looks like. Because that future, I think that's one of the challenges we have in like the recent zoning cases is that that vision is different for, it's like beauty in the eye of the beholder. That vision is different for many different people. And so we want to try to see if we can develop some consensus and then tools to work by and decisions to make. And then, of course, community voice to help influence that vision.
Certainly.
Is there any way we can expand those boundaries? Because if you go to Stonebridge and you go up to 29, I think you have an interesting mix there. It for gyms or schools, a little different in that neighborhood or what happens in that neighborhood. And it almost seems when you go south of 94 on along University, that is another area that if we're going to fill or infill or do any type of density that we may have the same challenges you have in your core, or is it just they're not as well organized so they wouldn't have a lot of value? I mean, I can see where your boundaries are, but it almost seems in my mind to match your active neighborhood core groups, right? And so, but Stonebridge, what's going to happen there? You have a beautiful park, there's some things could develop, walkable areas, what are we going to do? South of the 94, we have huge areas of some issues in neighborhoods that somehow have to be addressed, and it may be more density, it may not be more density. I mean, I'm not sure. You got older housing stock that has to be addressed. Again, are you thinking with your core team that you're looking at now, that will address all those issues?
That's a great question. No, I don't think it'll address all those issues, and I think the main thing is each neighborhood has probably their own distinct issues, and every neighborhood's worthy of, master plan, strategic plan, community discussion, and the planning staff's here to provide that support and guidance and consensus building. And so I agree that we need additional studies to include and time in our work plan to engage all of those neighborhoods, because there are a lot of factors influencing those neighborhoods.
Well, I just think 17th Avenue, when we talked about a traffic study and came out there, we had a huge neighborhood involvement of how they viewed their area to be. And we wanted a corridor. We wanted 17th to go right down this area and be a corridor for transportation. And there's sometimes a conflict in that of what you view your neighborhood to be and what we as a city view we're going to use your street for, which is going to be a corridor. And I just don't know, I mean, John, when you're doing your neighborhood involvement or developments, it's to do housing stock, but is it also the character of the neighborhood? What is it you want? And I think if you asked any person in Fargo, North Fargo evokes a certain image, right? I mean, we just have that image. And if you get in South Fargo, you get a little altered North Fargo image, right? Because you have a lot more new stuff down south. But what is it that everybody wants? Because I know I couldn't plant a huge apartment complex down in the Osgood area unless it was on the main corridors. But what would we do in the neighborhoods? Which is the same question we're doing in North Fargo. Do you replace all single stock housing with four-bedroom or fourplex apartments or sixplex apartments, or what is our density will take? And that's what you said at your meeting you just went to. Even in San Francisco, that's a great debate. You know, what I noticed about San Francisco, if you drive along the interstate, you look off to your left, you see piles and piles of row houses. And that's kind of seems how they solved their problem. They just had developers come in and put in row houses. And if you didn't want to live in San Francisco, you could live a 15-minute commute and live in a row house. Is that going to be our style? I don't know. So we have the objections from North Roosevelt, I mean, all the time when we get anything bigger than, fourplex. I mean, everybody objects to whatever we're putting into it. So that's the answers you're going to bring to us, right?
Sure.
And Nicole, I think this will be a great opportunity for us to build bridges to our neighborhoods and to the leadership, some folks that we maybe don't know as well, and to roll them in, and especially proactively, the more we can hear from them up front, and so they're not later on after the fact going, well, why weren't we included? But this is a great opportunity for us to go forward and really and be partnering with them. Anybody else? I know this setup here is more daunting, so don't be intimidated by this space. We can be just as loose as we ever want to be with comments. Sam, did you have something? No? Okay, Nicole, did you touch on the neighborhood downtown?
No, I wanted to explain the other laydown item in front of you. It just came to us last night, but Carol Schlossman from the Fargo Downtown Neighborhood Association presented this, almost, I could probably call it a white paper, on components related to living in downtown and affordability and housing. So I'm not going to present it because I'm not going to do it justice, but I think it's really good information that Carol brought forward, and so I asked her if I could share it with her or with you all, and she of course said yes. And I know Commissioner Strand has engaged in further dialogue with her, and perhaps at the next Community Development Committee, she or someone from the Neighborhood Association could be here to have some more dialogue with you. But they were very engaged in the Downtown in Focus plan, and we're on the steering committee as that. And so it's always great to have that, again, community voice and perspective to share. So this is more just for your reading background.
I read Google the other night on how to do an operation, so now I know how to do operation. The only thing I don't like about this is that when somebody comes into me and says, I looked up on Google, Tim, what you're going to do to me tomorrow, I haven't had the experts look at it. So it's an analysis of what the expert says. So she gave us a lot of data last night. I'm assuming your planning department could grab the same data.
Yeah.
And I'd like to be that person that wants your interpretation. So what I'd like to see out of this data is, can you please tell me what it really says? Because to me, I think that's what you guys work at, right? I mean, our whole planning department does that. So what I'd like a more crisp analysis of what's going on in our community, because I think you have quite a few that work on that. Because she did give us a lot of data, and then when we went back and re-looked at it today, we were looking through it and going through some of the statistics we have. It doesn't fully portray what's going on. Number two is, do or do not need more housing downtown? I want the mode that we're going to have 5,000 people move downtown. So is it going to be all affordable? Is it going to be workforce, as John talks? Is it going to be high rent? Is it going to be low rent? If we take down the high rise, what are we going to put there? Are we going to put condos in there that are high rent? You know, are we going to put in affordable housing or low income housing? Where is it we're headed as a community? And I know the struggles. I hear a variety of different things, but it was just like we're talking about millennials not buying cars. And somebody came to me with the statistics that's only 1% change. It's not really a change. It's only 1% of millennials aren't buying cars. So as the governor thinks in 10 years we're going to replace all our cars, I guess that's not where we're headed quite as fast as people think. But it's a discussion. And so I didn't mind this, but I'd rather have you guys look at it, and I'd ask a report from you. So Carol can come and talk to us. It's a very nice talk. I appreciated that. But aren't you guys the experts of Fargo?
We're part of the experts.
Well, I hope so. No, because she's got some data that's come from different talking points, and it's not necessarily what Fargo is. So
Yeah,
a lot
no,
of
we
our
can present you
population,
this.
John and I are talking about how many are in apartments. Well, if you look at West Fargo and Moorhead, they have less people in apartments because they have less apartments, right? And we have a kids' apartment because we have a school here. So we will skew the figures as far as that goes. But if you get to be 35 or 40 or more of those people in home ownership, I mean, if we take some of the skewed data, you say, here's why things are experiencing this way. Well, if a lot of people are single till they're 30, they're not necessarily going to buy a house. You know, and if a lot of our skewed data is because NDSU is growing so fast, right? 16,000, 17,000, how many thousand people go to school there? Is that skewing our data? So when we say we want more home ownership, do we really have the ability to do that? Because if you look at Horace and West Fargo, and John maybe can confirm this, they're about 90% homeowners. I mean, they have some apartments, but they don't have the sense of what Fargo has. So maybe they're taking a lot of our homeowners out of our system. Same with Moorhead, they don't have a lot of apartments as well. So a lot of times when we fight for this home ownership, is it a problem? And what is the data? And what is the real data that helps drive what we're going to do? Because the same thing, I think, John, as you and I know, we have too many apartments right now, because now they're having vacancies, okay? So we went too far that direction. We could go the direction of trying to do a lot of homes. And what I'm seeing in the lot sales, we have a lot of lots available right now. And so it's, are we just missing the population push? So if you had 3,000 to 4,000 people coming to town or the metro area every year, you had that ability to push the market. Are we flattening a little bit? So sometimes when we react to things, what are we reacting to? And to me, the only way you could do that is your team has to come up with good data analysis and tell us what's going on so we can react to it as a community. Would you agree, John? And you went to that meeting. You should know all this stuff now.
I'm listening and learning all the time.
Come on.
Okay. Anything else for today's meeting? If not, anybody else from staff, anything else? If not, we'll stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for showing up.